What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? It is Matty Peveril with Marky D. Marky D, as always. Mate, Mad Monday show. How was your Easter weekend?
It was pretty good, man. I took yesterday off from driving. I did a lot of driving over the last 6 days, so took some time off to just do nothing and chill. Played a bit of pickleball yesterday.
Nice.
We just had some family stuff, but nothing too crazy to me. And it's just really just another day. So another day to tick off before the draft. We are live, right? Check. We're live.
Yeah, we're good.
Because
We're good.
I just went live on mine. Still, I was by accident. So apologies for anyone who saw me clear my throat in that one. I have deleted the video by now, but now I'm probably cancelled on the internet. So I didn't know I was live. I was like 3, 2, 1, let's go, and I made a blunder. Mad Monday.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it. Cool stuff. Well, as you and I record this, pretty much in the last couple of hours or so, the Steelers have signed Armon Watts, a defensive tackle out of Minnesota and Chicago. So played in the same division there. I don't know. You obviously broke the news about it on your show, so I'll leave it there. But I don't know. To me, I just pulled up, started 22 games, played in 57, has 8 sacks, 7 tackles for a loss, 15 QB hits. He's a bit of depth. I mean, he comes to Steelers with a bit more credentials than Montravius Adams had, so I think it's a good thing. But as I said, you covered it live. So, I mean, how do you feel about the pickup?
To me, it's just what I saw. So I didn't look at any highlights, but what I saw in his stats and what I was reading about him when I was covering it live, it's just another bloke I think coming in for that position. I do feel as though that they will do more of a rotational stuff. Someone did point out that maybe Montravius Adams could be on the cutting bench. That could be a
I've said
possibility.
that too. I think so.
So there's got to be a reason why you're bringing in 2 defensive tackles. So for me, there's a
Sorry.
well, there's a few things. To me, you bring in 2 blokes for Hoko. Fahoko was in an interview the other day, I think, with Jersey Jerry or one of the dudes from Barstool, whoever the bloke over there is, a Pittsburgh guy. And sorry, I'm not giving you the best credit, but he was over there doing an interview, and there was a few snippets saying that he doesn't need to be the guy that, like Aaron Donald, needs to be a guy in the middle that can just be the anchor. Like Casey Hampton, just the big fella up front, play that role. Mike Tomlin reached out to him, stuff like that. So he might be the guy that could be in rotation. I don't know if that Montravius Adams will be there in training camp, or he might go through it and then get cut. He's not going to be, might not be the starter. And this other bloke coming in, it's going to be for competition. Second point is, though, do the Steelers now go and get defensive tackle higher than what they may have previously done with the two players coming in via free agency? I don't know, right? You got 2 guys coming in.
So I love that you brought that up. So 2 things for me. I feel like he's a like-for-like replacement for Aluwalu, Armon Watts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's done enough there. When I look at this, I mean, realistically, you've got more defensive tackles on the roster. Maybe you prioritize another position. But as a Steeler fan, like right now, we did lose Wormley, right? Unless he's coming back and, maybe he's coming back. I don't know. It kind of seems like they're done there. You're losing Aluwalu. Loudermilk's not really proven anything. Liao's more of an outside defense, more of an, he's not a one technique defensive tackle. Montravius Adams, I think, is proving that he's not necessarily that guy. And you can save, I think it's roughly about 1.8 or 2 million by cutting him on the cap. That could be really helpful money, particularly when I haven't cut Gunnar yet. So I don't know if this changes it. Honestly, my gut feeling when I saw it, when it wasn't like a household name defensive tackle, and I know that obviously you've got Ogunjobi, but again, he's more of a defensive end in their system. I kind of thought maybe they are going to actually draft a defensive tackle because clearly they think there's a weakness there. And if you draft a defensive tackle in the first 3 rounds, that guy's probably better than most of the guys that we've just spoken about. So
yeah,
I think it. Steelers fans who think now, there's no way they're getting a defensive tackle at 17 or 32 or 49. I would actually be more skewed the other way. This is clearly a priority position for them. They're more likely to use, in my mind, the first pick, the second picks on a defensive tackle than they are an interior offensive line guy. Because think about it right now. Because you've got Dotson, you've got Ciamalo, you've got James Daniels there, you've got Moore, you've got Herbig, you've filled those needs there.
Yeah, it is interesting though that someone else brought up in my live that they haven't went and targeted the left tackle just yet too. But I feel like the Steelers are getting all these
But we
players.
talked about that on one of our shows too. Like, for you to improve left tackle, you would have to spend more money than what they've got, or you have to spend a high draft pick, and we haven't had the draft yet. So,
Well, I'm actually okay. I'm in the camp that I'm okay with Dan Moore. I think he's
yeah.
getting better.
And then Big Ben, remember what Big Ben said 2 or 3 weeks ago on foot, or might have been 4 or 5 now on football, and where he talked really highly of Dan Moore.
Yeah, and I think we give up too easy on some of these players. Yes, he let in a lot of sacks, but that's the name of the game, right? You can't keep him out all the time. You know what I mean? And when they
Well,
play better on the
I
right
think as
side.
well, like Okorafor, people have kind of moved on from criticizing Okorafor. I think
true.
I think Dan Moore has had a better start to his career than Okorafor has.
Yeah,
Do
but
you
he's
know what I
also
mean?
played he's played all the snaps. He plays every single snap of that. I think in
Correct.
2 years.
And he
so
plays well against the Browns, against Myles Garrett, right?
He's healthy. Yeah, exactly. His health is there. There seems to be a lot of criticism like Dan Moore sucks.
He's cheap.
Yeah, so I don't know why that they want to cut him straight away and get someone else in there. I kind of like him there, and also with Isaac's Ciamalo next to him, it's going to be completely different, So
Yeah.
I think that Dan Moore is okay, but I'm not saying that the Steelers won't go and sign a tackle, but I legit don't know what they're going to do at 17. Nor do I know what they're going to do at 32. I know positions though, like cornerback, tackle and defensive tackle and stuff like that, outside linebacker. But I have no clue. I think the Steelers are really going to ramp up for a good draft because they're going out there and signing like 10 players now. 10 new players in the team is quite a lot of people, I think, in this free agent period. So they're moving some pieces around there, and Omar Khan and Waddle and the Rooneys and Tomlin are saying, we're ready, man. We're building this thing. Do you want to be a part of it? And a lot of these players who are coming in, they're very physical. So I'm keen to find out more about Watts. Because we've already seen what Herbig had to say, and Ciamalo was keen too on offense. So I'm keen to see what they're going to do.
Yeah, I like the pickup. I like the pickup. I'm actually quite happy with the pickup. Like the other bloke they got from the Chargers. How do you say his name again? I haven't had to say it yet.
I think it's Fahoko. I think that's how.
Yeah, that's what it is. Fahoko. Is it Chris Fahoko? Is that his name?
Braden
Fahoko. Yeah. So Braden Fahoko. I think this guy's a better pickup than him. So I like it. I think it's a good thing. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the draft, that's a good segue. For those listeners that carried over from Behind the Steel Curtain when we're on there, which is now the Steel Curtain Network due to some changes they've had on their side of the equation, you might be familiar with in the draft process. The last couple of years, I've got like this master's special spreadsheet where I've gone and worked through Pro Football References, many pages, and developed a encyclopedia, if you like, of all Steelers draft picks. Mark, I thought that's what we could focus today's show on and see if we could learn things like when they pick defensive tackles in the draft based on what they've done historically. Because if we think about Omar Khan, yes, he's a new GM and yes, he's doing some things differently. But at the same time, and maybe I should need to do one from the Eagles with Andy Weidel from when he's been with the Eagles and we can cross-check them. But maybe that's some homework for me for the next week, the next few days or so. But I thought, Omar Khan's been here since, I think it's 2004 or 3. He came in very early in the Colbert era.
Yeah.
I think it's 03 because he said he'd done 20 years before becoming GM. So, obviously, Colbert started, 2002, 2003 he came in. Colbert started 2000 with the Steelers. So, I've got it split between Colbert and, Colbert and post-Colbert and then pre-Colbert. Is a separate spreadsheet, but I've got that too. I thought we could have a look at it, particularly after what we talked about on TDU boys over the weekend as well. So if you missed that, go back and check that. Mark and I did a bit of an Easter egg hunt of each other's favorite Steelers players, which was a really good time. It was a really good show.
Yeah, we got a few right as well. We got a few right. I picked Lamar Woodley for you. You got Lawrence Timmons for me. Back and forth was kind of cool.
We did. It was really good. My I was listening back because someone was listening back to our show, so we can prove. And I was listening on loudspeaker. And my fiance was like, "Man, you guys are clearly doing a lot of podcasts. You know each other's favorite players.
Too many
guesses. There was a streak where we had 4 or 5 in a row, so it was good stuff.
Yeah.
And I had that big brain fart during that show about Randall.
Usman's That's all right. Oh, I made my brain fart today. I went live.
It happens. I'm not feeling good.
We're human, man.
That's it. We're not. This is why you tune into us, not AI shows, right? Because AI shows don't make those mistakes, but they're not funny. They're not funny. All right. So for the next sort of 15 or so, or 15, 20 minutes of the show, I want to quickly, look at these, talk about the draft stuff. But obviously, I've got this encyclopedia, as I said, of these picks. I guess, where do you want to start? Do you have a question based on what we've done?
My first question is why? Why'd you start this?
Why did I start this? So
Yeah.
I wanted to know going into I think it was 2020 or 2019. I think it was 2020 when we didn't have a first rounder and we picked Chase Claypool. And going into that draft, I wanted to know what the Steelers had done in the first round versus the other rounds. And I also started it because everyone kept going on about how damn good Colbert was. And I personally, I'm not dispute Colbert. I like the activity and proactivity of Omar Khan, which I think is a lot more of a modern GM. But everyone talks about all these great players he drafted. But I started this because I felt a lot of the first rounders he drafted have turned out to be pretty average, right? So when I went through he's more of the way people talk about Colbert, it's like 80% of the first rounders he gets are like pro bowlers, all pro guys Hall of Fame. It's more like 50% of the guys that he drafts.
Right.
He's good in the middle rounds. So that's why I started this, because I was like, well, I don't know if it's quite right. And so I actually did it kind of for negative reasons to start off with, to be honest.
All right, I got a question for you. So, in terms of the draft, and this is something that comes up quite a lot to do with the O line. When's the last time we drafted someone in the first round for the O line position?
Yeah, cool. All right, so I need to just.
So it's ages ago, right? It's like a long time.
I think it's DeCastro, which was 2013.
Right.
But let me. I will custom sort that. Yeah. Position in the first round.
Yep.
First round. So we're going column B by column.
Do you have all rounds? Do you have like 1 to 7 rounds?
1 to 7. I don't have any undrafted free agents. That's the only thing.
Wow.
Sort by B round. That's smallest to largest. Values. Yeah, that should work. Okay. You want offensive line?
Yeah, man, that's a big question I keep hearing. Is like, why don't they draft offensive linemen? When's the last time?
So they drafted DeCastro in 2012 and Kendall Simmons in 2002. They were both guards. They weren't tackles. They haven't drafted a tackle in the first round in the Colbert or post Colbert era. And
here's my question, maybe to yourself. Why? Actually, no one else really. There's no one else here. I'm in a bloody blunder today, mate. Why would they do that? Why wouldn't they draft offensive tackles in the first? Offensive linemen in the first round? If it hasn't happened,
yeah, that's a good
twice
question.
In 20 years.
Well, I think number one, when you look at their picks, apart from, so they've only had 2 top 10 picks in Devin Bush, which they traded up for, and Plaxico Burress, right? So Ben was an 11th, right? So since 2000, they've only had 2 picks in the top 10. So some of their top tackles are off the board, and then they probably don't see value, right? They've drafted a lot of defensive players. They've drafted 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. I lied. They have one other offensive player in Pouncey. He was picked in 2010. So they've only picked three guys, and they're all interior. I think they feel like tackles they can get later in the draft because of guys that people miss and different evaluations. So it could just be a scouting thing, or it could be that they like veteran tackles, right? And they've brought those guys in at times. So, and I think it's also this team just preferences defense over offense.
To extend that question, because Omar Khan has been a part of this team since 2002, why do you think that would change now, being in the first 2 rounds? Why would they, or in the first round? Because people are saying, maybe get offensive tackle there or left tackle. Why would they change if there hasn't?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. There's 3 things that factor into this. One is at 17, I think Omar Khan's more aggressive in the draft than Colbert. So he's more likely to trade up, I think, than Colbert. You've got tackles. You've probably got 4 or 5 offensive linemen that could fall anywhere between Chicago at 9 and the Steelers at 17. I also think cornerback is more highly sought after than it was for most of the Colbert era. So guys like Porter, Devin Witherspoon, and Christian Gonzalez are going to go higher up in the draft. Wide receiver is also more highly, I think, sought after at times as well. So I think there's like Jackson Smith and Jigba and a couple of wide receivers that you could see go early. Defensive line is a lot more of a focus. So like the Steelers have picked Cam Hayward, Evander Hood, Casey Hampton in the first round. So they've picked 3 defensive line guys. 3 defensive line guys will go off the board in the top 10 potentially if Jalen Carter goes off the board. So I think it's about what's left versus the tackles in the draft. Like they've traditionally, the top 3 or 4 tackles go in the first 12 picks, and the Steelers just haven't had those guys. So they haven't had those picks. So it could just be in the way that 1, Khan's more aggressive. 2, positions of value have changed. 3, there's 4 or 5 pretty decent tackles in this draft, and one of them is Steelers are picking 17. If you've got 4 to 5 tackles, you've got a 25 to 33% chance that one of those guys is going to fall to you at 17. So,
yeah, right. Very, very interesting because we got in the first round in 20 years, we've had two offensive linemen. That's it.
Three.
Okay. Another question then is let's stick to the first. I think everyone's talking about 17, and we always forget about everything past 17 or 17-32. We're talking about, but so let's stick with 17. Let's do another narrative too. Is the cornerback position, right? How many like secondary players have we selected in the first round? I know Artie Burns is in there, and Terrell Edmonds
is in there. Okay,
maybe in the last like 15 years or 10 years to keep it quicker.
Why can't we easily do that? So Artie Burns, you mean cornerback specifically or defensive back?
Secondary, because I want to try and just see
secondary. So you got Terrell Edmonds, 1, then you go Troy, and then Artie Burns. That's it.
So 3, right? Because the whole notion around we can't select cornerbacks, but yet or secondary out of these things and out of those 3 picks, one's a Hall of Famer, and Terrell Edmonds played pretty good for us. So really, that's like what 2 out of 3 was successful, and Artie Burns was terrible. I'm trying to.
If you go off history, right? The Steelers at 17 are most likely to pick an inside linebacker, right? Because they picked Devin Bush at 10. Shazier at 15, Jarvis Jones at 17, although he was more outside. He should be an outside linebacker on this, and Lawrence Timmons at 15. But they've picked 4 linebackers. I mean, it's hard. I think Jarvis Jones is an outside linebacker, so I don't like how Pro Football Reference categorized him when I copied some of their data across. But like, if you look at this, like even 3 at the pick 17 or thereabouts, they've drafted linebackers. So yeah. And they've drafted 2 other outside linebackers there. So they're more likely to draft a linebacker inside or outside at 17 than they are cornerback.
And where was TJ Watt was 30, right? He fell.
He was 30. Bud Dupree was 22.
So how many linebackers we signed in the first round then? Maybe that's the key. That's
4,
the key.
6.
6 in the last 20 years? 20 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it the highest position that we have signed? That we have got drafted was linebacker?
Yeah.
Is there a connection there in this draft for linebackers? Is there a connection where someone is rated around 17 and still like, you know what, we need a linebacker?
Yeah, maybe Nolan Smith, but I think a lot of Steel fans would be pretty cranky about that.
Is he the edge? Is he edge guy, right?
Guy that ran like a 4.32. That some people talk to him about the Eagles at 10, but that would depend on where things move around. I think Steel fans would be pretty cranky if that happened.
If that were to happen, we've already got Highsmith there, though.
That's your narrative. Highsmith, they're not re-signing Highsmith, and they'll trade him. But I don't understand a post-draft trade for Highsmith. That doesn't make sense to me.
You want to get the value for this draft, right? If you want to do it. Yeah. I talked about that the other day. I don't think they're going to trade Highsmith.
No, I don't think so either. They're going to sign him. And he's the sort of player they're hoping will do a hometown discount.
Yeah.
And also, you could sign him to a big deal, right? You could sign him to a 5 or 6 year deal when Cam Hayward's off the books, and you can give him Ogunjobi or Cam Hayward's money. I think that's not a problem for the Steelers. And they wanted to with Bud Dupree, and Bud wanted more money and he wanted to be designated a defensive end and get that franchise tag money, right? And he wanted to play defensive end in a 4-3. He was open to that. I think it's different with Highsmith. I think Highsmith, but Highsmith's also got a brain on him, and his dad is his dad and I follow each other on Twitter, like, and he comments on some of my stuff occasionally. Like, Highsmith's smart enough to know he could play alongside TJ Watt. It's like we talked about Lamar Woodley on Saturday across from Debo. He could play alongside TJ Watt for the next 5 or 6 years, and he's probably going to have double-digit sacks just because he's lined up next to TJ.
I think,
and I'm not disputing the hard work he does. I'm just saying, like, he benefits from that.
Yeah, I reckon they're going to work something out where it's good for the player and good for the organization. I think that's going to happen after this year. They'll extend him somehow. They'll keep them both. So let's take that off the boards. They're not going to draft the linebacker. Let's say that, right? But let's cancel that out. Even on history says they're going to draft that because it's the most. Who's the second most position in the first round that the Steelers are drafting?
Well, there's a lot of positions they've picked twice, like wide receiver, running back, quarterback, defensive end. I don't think they're picking quarterback, and I don't think they're picking running back, and I don't see wide receiver. I just don't when you've got DJ on the roster, especially with a Matt Canada offense. So, I mean, in all probability, like, it could be a defensive lineman. It could be, but I mean, if you're purely into stats and statistics and betting, you would say that more likely to draft a tackle or a tight end because they haven't done it before. But I don't know. To me, defensive line still seems like a solid position, unless there's like, it depends who moves as well. Like, the Titans would be rumored to trying to trade up to Arizona's position or with the Colts or something like that. If 5 quarterbacks go in the first 12 picks, there's going to be a good offensive tackle on the board still. And the Steelers he's going to fall into the Steelers' lap. It's going to be a Kenny Pickett 2.0,
Yeah, and I kind of like that. I kind of like all the other teams are struggling to find their guy, and we have our guy. Go and spend that pick, right? And we're going to get the better offensive tackle, whatever, right? If it is, improvement over there more, whatnot, I don't care. But just get someone that good at that position. Because you're right. They're not going to go running back. They're not going to go quarterback. They're probably not going to go receiver. They're going to go those splash plays. Then it comes back to, will they go linebacker? Well, we just investigated that. They're probably not going to do that. So maybe it's going to fall back to the trenches, which they're
what
building
up. What I would say too, they've got pick number 32, right? That gives them the ability to trade back and still get top players. Like, what if they traded back to, let's say, 24, 25 and picked Jack Campbell out of Iowa, and they got more picks in the middle? Remember, they got 110 pick gap between rounds 4 and round 7. Like, are you going to hate that as a Steelers fan? They fill a need at linebacker and they get more picks in round 2 or 3. I'm just saying, like, if you look at this data, they're just as much as likely to trade back. I mean, this is the thing. I think people are very stuck on the picking at 17, and they're not thinking about, like, you know what? Like, if you look at all the Pro Bowlers, and you look at the teams that have won Super Bowls over the last couple of years, and you look at guys in the Hall of Fame, most of them actually come in the 2nd and the 3rd round. Like, statistically, they come in the first top 10, 12 picks. After that, it's 2nd and 3rd round. To me, the only difference between a first round and a second rounder, apart from the fact you've got to pay a first rounder more, is a first rounder, you've got them on a 5-year contract, or think of it 6 years with a franchise tag. Therefore, what position do you want for 5 years? Which is how I convinced you about Brian Brees at 17. What position, which is why tackle, if it falls, could work. Same as cornerback. What position do you want for 5 years that's going to be cheaper? That's a bedrock of your team. And that's why I think tackle or O-line or D-line are where they will go over cornerback, because the Steelers have never preferenced a cornerback at that level before in a top 20.
Yeah. No, it's funny.
Unless Christian Gonzalez is there or Witherspoon, and I don't see Witherspoon making it to 17, someone will trade up to get him. Why would they, like, that's everyone's like, oh, we're going to pick Porter at 17. They must really like Porter if they're going to pick him at 17, because he's going to be the 3rd starter there. Whereas we could get a tackle today. Like, if you draft Broderick Jones, he might not start the first 3 or 4 games. He's starting after that for Dan Moore, right? If you go draft Brian Breesy, he's the starting interior tackle for the Steelers right now, with Cam Hayward on one side and Ogunjobi on the other. Like, no questions asked. So
I feel like some of these narratives are just day one things that we heard from like after Super Bowl 57 was like, oh, Steelers got to get Addison, Steelers got to get Joey Porter. We get it, Steeler Nation. That's what you want. But like,
it's clickbait.
I think,
It's clickbait.
yeah,
That's
I
what
feel
mean.
like, look, if it does happen, fine. But like, and I'm not really overly against it, but I still think there are different positions that of need. And yeah, I'm more or less falling into the camp that it will be a tackle or defensive tackle because what they're doing with the free agent signings, they're going all that direction. And do you go and get do you go and can like Joey Porter Jr. come in here and be a menace on this team and be an instant upgrade? Not too sure, but can you get a big guy up front that can do that? I reckon so. So but yeah, I think whatever happens, man, Steelers fans won't be happy. It doesn't matter.
So any last questions? So like you have a last question to close out the show?
Last question. So let's try and find someone. You haven't got anything like listed by height or anything, do you? Like that? Nah, you got nothing like that.
No.
Nah.
I could have, but they didn't have all of it, so I cleaned that out. It didn't make a lot of sense.
Let's stick with the Let's stick with the first round. When's in the last 20 years? What's the highest we've picked? Is it Devin Bush?
No, well, since 2000, Plaxico Boris in 2000 was picked number 8.
Number 8, Plaxico Boris.
Yeah.
Right. Did we have how many times in the last 20 years or so have we had 2 picks in the first round? Is that there? Do you have that?
None. I don't think so.
Okay. So
I don't want to resort this. I've got it in a good sort.
That's all right.
No, I don't think it's any. We've never had 2 first rounders.
So looking back at it, so the highest was 6 for Plaxico.
8.
We traded up
8.
Yeah. So we traded up for Devin Bush, right?
Yeah.
That was
traded back for Casey Hampton.
Right. And then one year the Steelers also had no pick because they used that for Minka, right?
Yeah. So that was 2020.
Right. And then what last year was Najee Harris and then Kenny Pickett. Yeah. Now, okay, here's one last question, and it's not really to do with your list, but do you think that they went offense with Najee Harris, they went with Kenny Pickett. Do you think at 17 they're gonna need to find a connection with Kenny Pickett if it is offensive line? Do you know what I mean? Do they build that theme? Like because they went running back, quarterback.
No, I actually think the other way. I think they need to get someone cheap on the defense because the defense is really expensive.
Right.
And they've just paid DJ, right? They've paid DJ what it used to cost for a decent wide receiver plus a defensive lineman. I think they need to get younger there for the future because Whitehall builds through the trenches. So to me, I think they're more like as I said, like all the evidence to me still points to defensive line. Like I don't know why they wouldn't go pick there.
Well, maybe that's happening.
But the thing is, apart from Breesy, there's not a lot of guys, and Carter at the start. There's not a lot of guys there that make a ton of sense at 17. Which is why, if that's their top need, they trade back. What I think will happen, they will wait till pick 15, and we've got to close the show. I think they'll wait till pick 11, 12. If Tennessee don't move up, Tennessee are going to get a tackle, right? They need offensive line help like there's no tomorrow. And then they're going to look at it and they're going to go, well, what are we being offered to trade backward, right? And if they can move back 3 to 8 spots and acquire more picks later, particularly when you go through this list and you see how many wide receivers and defensive ends and cornerbacks or defensive backs they get in the second and the third round, that's what they're going to look to do. But as they like to say, they don't want to pick at 17 very often. So do you go the other way, which is what the talk's been and trade up? I don't think so. I don't think the Steelers are going to want to offer. Like next year's draft could be really, really important for a Kenny Pickett on his rookie deal. You're not particularly. What happens if Kenny? He will work out, but if he didn't work out, there's lots of quarterbacks next year. You don't want to trade quarterback number 1, your pick next year, and you also don't want to trade that because you don't know what teams are going to want to trade up for next year. So I think they're more likely to trade back than trade up, and I also think trading back in this draft, depending on who trades up before them, is probably the smartest move.
So if they trade back, where do they fall? Do they fall back to like 31 or they fall back further than
that?
No.
I don't think they'll go past 25, 26.
Okay.
They'll look for something in 21 to 23 range. And then they can pick Breesy and fans can shut the heck up. Or they can pick Darnell Wright, the right tackle, like they can pick any of those guys and they're in good shape.
And what will they get in return for that? They get like another.
They'll get if they go back to like 25, the person may have to give them a late second. If they go back a few spots, the person might give them a second or a third and a fourth, or if you can go back 4 or 5 spots and get a third and a fourth, or you can get a late second and an early fourth, or even if you get a late second that you can flip again, winning.
Yeah, they need more. We've only got 7 picks, right? They need more players.
Yeah. So that's going to close out our Mad Monday show. We've come up with we've been mad scientists coming up with a bunch of mad scenarios for the draft. And if you've got a question for the show, put in the comments. I'll look it up in my historical list. As always, you can email us at aussiesteeler91@gmail.com for the topic for Mark and I to discuss. If you liked our show, hit the like button. If you don't subscribe to us, subscribe, please. Hit the bell icon if you want all the notifications. We're also available at SteelersTDU on Apple, Anchor, and Spotify. And Marky D, I hope you have a good rest of your Mad Monday.
Yeah, man. If you don't like the show, go follow the Bengals. They need some bandwagon fans. So go follow them. All right.
As
Go
always,
Steelers. Here we go.